For 30 plus years, this next presenter has been driven by his personal mission to empower people with art. In 1996, he managed the successful merger of the National Assembly of Local Arts Agencies with the American Council for the Arts to form Americans for the Arts. He's now president and CEO of that organization and advocates for arts-friendly public policy. He also serves on the U.S. Travel and Tourism Advisory Board. Last year, the nonprofit Times Power and Influence Top 50 named him one of the most influential executives in the sector. He plays piano, mandolin, and guitar, and is a survivor of the original Woodstock concert. Please welcome Robert Lynch of Americans for the Arts, a SphinxCon founding partner.
I know you all thought, how can that be? He's so young looking. But I want to say good evening, first of all, to everyone, and I want to thank you, Sphinx, thank you, Aaron, and thank all of you for the work that you do. Woodstock, yes, as far as I can recall, I was there. Actually, as you mentioned that,
I can't hear you over Bob.
And the music was, of course, there, but community was the key lesson I got out of that, and something that affected me and the power of community ever since. I have the coveted 8:30 slot here this evening, so I'm going to try to talk really fast. I want to say that the mission of Americans for the Arts is, to a large extent, what I want to talk about. All the arts, all the people. That big tent is what we have looked for and gone after all these years. And Americans for the Arts, and what I'm going to talk about tonight related to us, is we're actually three organizations. We are a 501c3, Americans for the Arts, lots of information. We are the Americans for the Arts Action Fund. Many of you are members of that. That's our political 501c4 organization. And we are a political action committee, giving out dollars and support to congressional candidates. I want to talk about, as you see on this slide here, diversity and policy, actual policy, getting it done and ingraining it into the societies and the areas that we've been talking about here. I heard somebody in a speech earlier today talk about build the infrastructure of what already is. And the way I want to talk about that is getting the face of America, what America actually is, the broad face of America, into four areas. Public policy, organizational policy, advocacy, how we get that done, and future planning. Those four areas. And along the way, I want to recognize a few heroes of mine. So let me start with the past here. A long time ago, I think the arts in America are a series of surges forward and great setbacks. First big setback, 1492. Now, if you think about it, 1492, before Columbus, the Native American community pretty much had it together. Arts was part of every part of society, cooking, ritual, housing, clothing. In fact, many Native American cultures have no word for art. It's part of everything. But you think about who came in 1492 after Columbus. Conquistadors, westward expansionists, people fleeing religious persecution, indentured servants, slaves, prisoners, not necessarily an artsy crowd. They had art. They brought art in and of themselves and for themselves. It was a survival mechanism. But art as a community value was a long time in coming in America. Next big setback, 1620. Pilgrims, followed by Puritans. This was a grim group. Okay? You've seen the pictures, like this one right here. They outlawed dance. They outlawed theater. They outlawed certain colors in all of New England. They actually either killed or banished people who were different than them, mostly because of religious background. the, um, the evolution of art in America is up against a history of that kind of impediment. And art, again, outlawed in the 1600s, outlawed in 7 states, art, theater, music in the mid-1700s, outlawed in certain places again in the 1800s. So what we have as a backdrop, and we should always remember this, why are we having to spend so much time making the case for the arts, for diversity in the arts, is that we have a very practical nation as a background. And art was often seen as an extra, and we still fight those battles today. Now, for me, it was a rough and rocky road to the arts. I had 8 years of the Sisters of St. Joseph and 4 years of the Jesuits. And so we had no art. I was very jealous. I saw all the hands go up earlier. We had no art in the curriculum. I had Gregorian chant in the 7th grade. That was nice. And we read the Aeneid in Latin in high school. So for me, my pathway to the arts was through fun. That's the Rising Suns, my band, in 1963. Now, it was kind of scrunched up there. We weren't munchkins in a basement. But I had a lot of fun. Rock and roll, a soul band, Irish bands. And it was something that was really important to me as a way to learn. Now, I saw everybody else bringing instruments here, and I don't have a piano, and I don't have a guitar, and I don't have my mandolin. But when I was in that soul band, the Bobby Diamond Review, it was a multicultural band, 1967. I was the youngest person, and the other guys made me, in addition to playing the organ, do a soul intro. WILD radio taught me how to do it, and I brought my sunglasses, and if I can remember it, it goes something like this, and this is the walk-around part of my performance today. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're going to be uptight, out of sight, all right, in the groove, and smoking. We see your face in the place. We're going to try to soothe you, move you, groove you, until you have to jump back, jack, etc., etc. So, I then went on. My mother wanted me to study dentistry. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. Went off to college, and I chose poetry, where the big bucks are. And got out of college and discovered all the poet jobs were taken. But I came away with a love of poetry, love of literature, and I have one poem for you tonight by William Carlos Williams, a very brief poem. And it goes like this. The news is not found in poems, but men die every day for lack of what is found. Poetry, dance, music, art, for lack of what is found there is the key. And art is important. It's part, I think, of the solution to many of the problems that we have in America today. You believe that too. And so what we have to do is to institutionalize that gift, the arts, in order to move on and make the changes that we're all wanting to see. So who we are as an organization is reflective of who you are. At the bottom, we represent 10,000 nonprofit arts enabling organizations, funding and service organizations in America. That's Americans for the Arts. At the top, 250,000 citizen activists who will, by email, make contacts to legislators and other leaders. On the right, community leaders, like famous artists who might help us, or business leaders, or patrons. And on the left, organizations, not arts organizations, at the national level where those leaders go, like the United States Conference of Mayors, or the Conference Board, where all business leaders gather. And the idea is we want to, through that kind of partnership, affect public policy in every community in America, public policy that benefits the arts and that benefits the face of America. So let's take a look at one such policy. Somebody said earlier, money is a key. Let's get the money for the kinds of arts diversity that we're talking about here. Well, this little snapshot here is what money policy, this money circle, what money policy is in America for culture. A lot of service organizations are here. Each one does a profile of where money comes from symphonies or theaters or museums or dance. And then there are many, many other kinds of breakdowns of the arts in America. We try to aggregate it and come up with a profile. And interestingly, what this profile shows is that 60% of the 110,000 nonprofit arts organizations in America, 60% of the money comes from earned income. It shows that some 9% comes from government, with local being the largest chunk, and states being next, and then, or federal being next, and then state. But the federal money is actually mostly from other areas than what was talked about earlier, the National Endowment for the Arts. The National Endowment for the Arts, powerful as a lever, is 1/4% of that picture that you see up there. So from a policy point of view, we want to make sure that the face of America is represented in funding policy for the arts in every one of those sectors. On the earned income side, that's a marketing question. On the government side, that's a lobbying question. And on the private sector side, it's a fundraising question. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about, my first hero tonight, Maynard Jackson, the mayor of Atlanta, who I met in 1975. Maynard Jackson was a speaker at the conference that was our organization back then under a different name. And what he spoke about then was art and community development. As an African-American leader, as the mayor of a great city, it was the first time I heard that talked about. And he talked about art and community development, arts and diversity of community, and he spoke about infiltrating decision-maker forums and doing that, becoming part of the infrastructure. We talked about that tonight. But what do we mean by that? So the League of Cities puts out a study every year, and it says this is what mayors and city council members care about. This is what keeps them up at night. You can see the things that are there. Policy areas, money, drugs, unemployment, crime, quality of education, race and ethnic relations. What's interesting about this is that Maynard Jackson, I was depressed when I saw this all those years ago. The arts are not on that list. But Maynard Jackson and John Gardner taught me that if we can find a way to involve the arts in each one of those areas, we not only help change and solve the problem, but we find a new way of supporting the arts in our country. And so a shout out to people. We have a program called Animating Democracy. Artists who focus on this kind of work through dialogue. Urban Bushwomen, Anna DeVere Smith, the Laramie Project, Ra Goddess, Reentry with KJ Sanchez, and the Wounded Warrior program there. All artists who help with this kind of problem solving through the artwork and through their dialogue. The on this list, the first thing on there is money. And this slide talks about something that there's sometimes controversy about, economic impact of the arts in America. So how many people here attended an arts event in the last month? Everybody. How many people went because of the economic impact of that arts event? Nobody. Okay. Of course. It's obvious. Personal decision making is not affected by, and valuing is not affected by the concept of economic impact or jobs. But policy decision making by leaders is, because it's the number one thing that they think about from the list before. And this particular slide shows a compelling case for the size of the economics of the arts sector. The next one is interesting for me in that it's a little thing that we have where we looked to Dun and Bradstreet to come up with lists of all of the art-centric businesses in America, the 110,000 nonprofits, and an additional 800,000 for-profits, whether it's Broadway or the film industry or the local music school or design. And then we married it to mapping technology, and we can pop out a map for any zip code in America. So in this case, there's one for each congressional district that makes up Detroit. And if you see the two shells put together, you can see the city of Detroit. What's interesting is if you add up the numbers that are there, you see that there are 2,676 arts-centric businesses in this city, and 9,473 jobs that relate to that. That's powerful information. That is, as you can see, every part of of the districts. So it encompasses all groups, all money levels. And one of the things we also do is we give a grade of art support for their votes to every congressperson and senator in the United States. And I'm very happy to say that Congressman Gary Peters on the left and Congressman John Conyers on the right both got A+ grades for their support. So congratulations to Detroit on that. The third issue, and another shout out, one of our former board members, Judy Baca, dealt with issues of drugs and crime and youth at risk through her work as an artist working with gangs and kids in Los Angeles, turning around lives through the arts and bringing attention to the value of the arts as something that could make change in that way. And some of her kids have gone on to become pillars of city leadership today. This is an interesting slide. It is a slide that is so important and compelling that the figures that were in it, the graphics, did not even come up. It shows gun deaths since Newtown, and the number is 1,793 gun deaths, disproportionately in communities of color, in communities of poverty. When we brought a program to the Republican National Convention this year, we brought the mayor of Mesa, among other people, Mayor Scott Smith, and the mayor of Mesa made the statement, Republican mayor, that when his city budget was coming up for review this year and people wanted to cut the arts, he and the police chief stood before the crowd and said, take the money, don't cut the arts, take the money out of the police budget for the arts, because the arts are keeping kids alive, basically. Our chairman of our board, Abel Lopez, is the artistic director of Gala Hispanic Theater, and this one illustrates the sixth issue that we talked about right there, streets and sidewalks, revitalization of community, and the idea all across America of the arts as the change agent is a key part of embedding the arts and embedding the face of America into policy change. At the federal level, you have Arne Duncan, Secretary of Education, as somebody who's looking at advancement of arts education. This will be a very important year because I think that they will be dealing with the No Child Left Behind Act, which has steered money away from arts education at the local level. And what's interesting as a tool is that we were able to advocate last year to get a study that's supposed to happen every 10 years, but was 2 years behind, to get the money to get the study done. And the study is availability of arts education in America. We need to know that. And what the study found was that it's more available than they thought in rich people's communities. And it's less available than they thought in the poorer communities. And what that led Arne Duncan to say, which I hope we can all take to the bank in our advocacy efforts, it led him to say, the lack of arts education in America has become a civil rights issue. So that's the kind of thing that we can lobby for and pull together on. Some other great heroes that I would like to point out here. Ralph Ellison and Elma Lewis. Elma Lewis is the first person I got to work with back in the early 70s. And what I learned from her at the Elma Lewis Playhouse in the Boston area, in Roxbury and Dorchester, was the power of spreading the story. First of all, she worked on changing community through the arts, and then she insisted on going around and spreading the story. Ralph Ellison was formerly on the board of directors of our organization back in the 60s, the author of Invisible Man. I had the great honor to have dinner with him, have lunch with him in 1985. And what did he talk about at that lunch? He said to me, kind of tongue-in-cheek, the arts are a way to help create visibility, not invisibility, visibility. Tell the stories. So important things like that lead to a thought about where do we need to work on making sure that the picture of America, the face of America exists. In policy, for an organization, I see it as in the leadership of all kinds, whether it's board or committees or councils, on the staff, in the written policy of the organization, all leading to program and audience. That's actualizing what we're talking about. Some great people on our board, some of whom have been talked about already, like Margie Reese in the middle, who was on the committee in the film that Jonathan put up there, is someone who does this every day in Dallas, formerly in Los Angeles, and chairs our diversity task force. Eva Lopez, you saw the benefit of his work in the picture about Gala Hispanic Theater. And then John Hayworth, the director of the New York branch of the National Museum of the American Indian, creating opportunity for Native American leadership in the arts through his quiet and ongoing work. A couple of other heroes and former teachers of mine. I don't know if anybody in music here ever met Roland Wiggins, a great music therapist, jazz theory. He was the music teacher and music theorist teacher for Yusef Lateef, John Coltrane, Donald Byrd, and Kenny Barron. And I had the opportunity to learn not music theory, but life theory at his feet at the University of Massachusetts. And one of the things that he said is, first you learn the rules, then you supplant them. Good lesson for all of us. And then Billy Taylor, also a former board member, said, don't forget that it starts with the kids. Don't forget arts education. The face of America must not only be who we are, but what we do, and what we all do. And then what we do at our organization is this, and you do this too. We all go around this circle all the time. We're trying to get to something at the top, which is action of some kind. But we have, it says research there, but that's just ideas, and the ideas have to include diversity. And we have strategic alliances, partners who help us, but there has to be a diversity of partnership. We have leaders who we train, and they have to get the face of America in their training. We bring messages to people, national arts promotional messages, and then finally, we are trying to get to the goal by asking for something, and that we call advocacy. And at the end of the day, we do something at the end, policy, and we keep going around that goal. Now, I am not going to go through a whole lot of other things that I wanted to talk to you about in the interest of time, but I will say that we have spent time for years bringing the face of America and the message of the arts in our advocacy work to the Democratic and Republican conventions of 2 years ago, to the Democratic and Republican conventions of last year, this one with Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of Education Dick Riley, the mayor of Sacramento, Kevin Johnson, and Bernie Williams of the New York Yankees, who is both a 5-time World Series winner and a 2-time Grammy nominee. And that's the kind of thing that Democrats like and Republicans like as well, with Mike Huckabee helping us chair what we did at the Republican National Convention. We need to recognize our heroes and recognize our leaders and make sure that the story is spread and told again and again. In this case, with people like Gloria and Emilio Estefan and Randy Jackson, Speaker Pelosi, Governor then and Secretary Vilsack, Jim Smits. We need to do it in the private sector as well as the public sector, telling the stories of the great businesses that make a difference. And when we get to the business side, I've shown a quick illustration of each part of the money wheel. We need to affect each part of the money wheel and keep the stories and the visibility, whether it's going in campaigns that we've done on the public sector side or in the private sector side, showing that the arts and creativity is something that business needs, and that we have something to give to make businesses more creative. And in the final analysis, when you put it all together, we're asking for America to be different. We're asking for the face of America to be in the work that we go after, and we need to bring the face of America to the table in order to make that happen. Today, in the future, with programs like training programs, in this case with Con Edison, or with the Joyce Fellows program, or with the wonderful organization Young Arts, where in today's times when I go to advocate or to bring a message to the private sector, I almost always bring one of these kids. I'd like to bring some Sphinx students in the future, because they expect me to talk about the value of the arts, but when they see it firsthand, it makes a huge difference. The arts in the face of America need to be at the table. They need to own the table. And if we do that, what we end up with as a return on investment is a better child, a better town, a better nation, a better world.